Good evening and happy Tuesday. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Angie Hubbard, the Director of the Housing Division at Metro Planning, and this is a public hearing on a disaster recovery grant that Metro Nashville is receiving in response to the 2020 tornado. Joining me that you may see on screen are some of my team members, Markel Mitchell, you'll wave, Daryl Hill, Angel Sims, Travis Miller, and off screen is James Dean. And then I see on screen that Council Member Aaron Evans has joined us. Thank you, Council Member. I'm looking in the list to make sure there are no other council members joining us tonight, but thank you all for being on. I'm going to share my screen and go through a presentation. During the presentation, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and enter those in the chat. Or hold your questions until the end, and we'll take questions after I finish with the presentation. Daryl will monitor the chat, read the questions at the end after I conclude my presentation, and I'll provide a response. And then also you can raise your hand and Daryl will call on you. Again, I'd like to get through the presentation first before we take questions, just to make sure we cover all the material in a timely way. This presentation is being recorded and will be posted on the Metro YouTube channel. With that, I am going to share my screen. I'm looking to my team members that are on screen. Nod your head that if you can see a slide that says perfect. Wonderful. So tonight we're going to cover the timeline. I'm sure many of you have the same question I did when we got this notice is, why are we receiving funding 5 years after a disaster? So I'll go over that. The purpose of this specific grant, the proposed activities, highlight federal requirements, next steps, how to stay connected, and then we'll get into your public comments. So on this timeline, first let me say that it's a bit unusual for the city of Nashville to receive its disaster recovery funding this way. Typically, it's awarded directly to the city from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and it's administered by the Metro Development and Housing Agency on the city's behalf. This time, however, it went to the state of Tennessee, and then the state of Tennessee made it available to the city. So we're considered a subrecipient of the state, and it's administered in a very different way. So, of course, on the screen, you see the timeline when the tornado happened in March of 20. The disaster declaration happened a couple of days after. It wasn't until September of 2021 that Congress appropriated money for this disaster recovery for HUD. Then HUD published a Federal Register notice in February of 2022. That Federal Register notice outlines the uses and the intent of the grant and has a lot of requirements and stipulations. They did a modification to this Federal Register notice and made more money available for 2021 disasters in a notice that was published in May of 22. Following that, the state of Tennessee prepared its action plan, which had to happen first. They published that in November of 23. It took the state of Tennessee a while to get through its action plan process because it wasn't just for the city of Nashville, it was for other counties that were affected by the 2020 tornado, as well as flooding and other disasters that happened in 2020. So it took quite a bit of time to prepare that action plan and then get it reviewed and approved by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Once that happened, the state of Tennessee notified Nashville that we were going to receive about a little over 10.8 million in long-term recovery efforts. And in response, we have to prepare an action plan to explain how we're going to utilize that money. So this type of a grant is not intended for an immediate response, obviously. 5 years later, it's meant to address any unmet housing needs further long-term recovery efforts and stabilization. We also are allowed to use up to 15% of the grant to mitigate impacts of future disasters. And then this grant is intended to primarily benefit households with incomes at or below 80% of our area median income. And on the screen, you can see what those income levels are. Regarding the unmet housing need, we have confirmed with the long-term recovery group that all claims for homes that still need repair, those cases have been closed. But if anyone out there knows of someone that is still needing assistance, please let us know. So we're proposing several activities with this funding. It's $10,827,467. The first, there are two activities within the rehab reconstruction category, and I'll cover each of these specifically. We have a new construction of for sale homes at $7 million, mitigation, and this will include owner occupied rehab, and then grant administration. And I will caveat that all of these activities we'll discuss tonight are still subject to approval by the state of Tennessee and HUD. So they may end up asking us to tweak or change some activities. And if so, we will notify the public of what the revised activities and any changes in beneficiaries will be. We identified areas that are called most impacted and distressed areas. For us, these are the zip codes that were impacted according to Metro records with some tornado damage. You can see these zip codes on your screen. 37208 is one of the primary targeted zip codes in the Federal Register notice. And you will see that's where we're focusing some of the new construction. Why did we choose these specific activities? Again, we needed to address unmet needs in long-term recovery and stabilization. But these activities are intended to support homeowners who use their own funds to repair their homes following the tornado. Again, to promote long-term recovery and stabilize impacted areas. We're doing that through affordable homeownership opportunities. We're also, through the mitigation efforts, reducing risk of housing loss caused by future disasters by making vulnerable and substandard homes safer and more resilient. So I'm going to get into each of these activities. The first one on reimbursement of costs to homeowners. And this is very specific and very narrow on how we can use these funds. And again, these are subject to the state of Tennessee approval. But this is intended to apply to homeowners. And first of all, they do need to be income eligible because these funds target low and moderate income families. The household at the time of application needs to be at that 80% AMI. But persons that would be eligible must have lived in that home at the time of the disaster as their principal place of residence and still reside in the home as their main primary home. It must be in one of the zip codes that we listed on the previous screen and be verified by local and FEMA records as having tornado damage. HUD regulations require that the cost must be eligible and reasonable. And so they must be for the primary dwelling unit. We do not cover costs associated with ADUs, detached garages, sheds, anything that is not the primary housing structure. They must be reasonable. This means that there must be some cost estimate or invoiced work, and certainly it must be documented by receipts. Some homeowners may have performed the work themselves. We would still need copies of receipts, and I know 5 years later those might be hard to come by, but we did want to offer this as an opportunity to help homeowners who use their own resources. And this is after FEMA or any other resources. Metro must do a duplication of benefits analysis. That means we have to look at what their FEMA assistance was for repair and recovery, what insurance they received, and any other local, state, or federal before Metro can then reimburse the actual out-of-pocket cost. Because this is federal money, the work must be have a pass an environmental review, meaning that the work should be in the same footprint and not cause any disturbance to the environment. And we do want folks to apply for this funding within the first year that this program is open, because any other leftover funding will be used for the second activity, which is the rehab and reconstruction of acquired properties. With this funding, we propose to issue a request for proposals to award funding to a nonprofit or nonprofit organizations to acquire vacant homes, rehab or reconstruct them, and sell them to income eligible buyers, again at that 80% of the area median income. This grant is not, we will not be using any federal funds for any relocation or displacement of homeowners. And so these homes need to be vacant. Again, the environmental review requirements apply here. Homes cannot be located in a floodplain or floodway. We are requiring, per HUD and state of Tennessee requirements, that all the rehab and reconstruction work must meet Energy Star or other third-party green building standards, as well as incorporate measures to make homes more resilient to windstorms and tornadoes. And we'll be more specific on these requirements in the request for proposals that are to come in the future months. We are prioritizing beneficiaries or buyers. The first two income eligible buyers who were living in one of the most impacted areas as either an owner or a renter, but when the tornado hit, but were subsequently displaced. Perhaps they weren't able to repair their home, or their home was, if they were a renter, their home was sold, or other reasons that caused this displacement. The second priority, so this is as applications come in, they'll be ranked by priority. Income eligible buyers who currently reside in one of the most impacted or distressed zip code as a renter or an owner and are cost burden. The intent here is to create affordable ownership opportunities. And then our third priority would be income eligible first generation home buyers. After that, it would just be open to any income eligible applicant, but all buyers must be able to qualify for a mortgage. For priority one, we will be entering into data sharing agreements with FEMA and the Small Business Administration to get information to confirm whether someone was residing in a home that was sold or displaced or impacted by the tornado, as well as we'll ask for other documentation if it wasn't, if they just lived in that area, but for other reasons were displaced, for other documentation such as electric bills or other things like that. These homes will have a 30-year deed restriction, making them affordable for that entire period of time. And if that home is sold, it must be sold and remain affordable to someone at 80% of the area median income. So that is the rehab and reconstruction activity. That total for both is a little over 1.64 million. The next is new construction of for sale homes with an activity budget of over 7 million. And again, we're looking to target new construction in the most impacted and distressed areas. The same parameters apply here as with the rehab reconstruction, with the environmental review, no projects in the floodplain or floodway, the Energy Star and green building requirements. Here where Metro is also making property located at 2119 24th Avenue North available in conjunction with this funding. This property does require rezoning, and a developer must work with a council member. And I don't know if Councilmember Toombs has joined us tonight yet, as well as with the community.
I'm on the call.
Then, oh, yay, Councilmember. I don't know if you want to pause here and make a few statements. I started before I saw you join. And then Metro also reserves the right to include additional requirements for land. And I'm going to pause for Councilmember Toombs to say a few things.
Thank you. I think that this is a pretty exciting project. We've been looking at the 2119 24th Avenue for several years. And if you don't know, that is the property. It's located behind the Save Lot off of Clarksville Highway. And so it's been sitting vacant for a long time. And so this is an opportunity to really provide some affordable home ownership to some individuals. So I'm looking forward to working with whomever gets chosen to be the developer and getting some community input on how that property can best work for the community. There's also an opportunity to perhaps implement like some green space that could be for the entire community in that area, maybe a pocket park. So there's a lot of potential there. So I'm really looking forward to talking about it more and really getting the ball rolling.
Thank you so much, Council Member, and we so appreciate your support of this project and encouraging this type of housing in your district. The next activity is for mitigation activities, and this isn't directly tied to the tornado. This, again, is to mitigate future disasters. With this at 15% of our budget for 1.64 million, this would be an award of funding to a nonprofit or multiple nonprofits, depending on how folks apply and request money and qualify. And this would could occur anywhere within the county. We are looking to correct code deficiencies with this funding, and again, incorporate resiliency measures for windstorms and future tornadoes. It may include accessibility improvements. These homes may not have received other disaster recovery assistance. Metro may require some form of a lien to be placed on a property for a period of time to protect the investment. And as I mentioned, this isn't restricted to just the most impacted and distressed areas, because there, as we know, unfortunately, there is a risk of a threat or a hazard anywhere in this county. And this is specifically targeting vulnerable and substandard homes to make them more resilient. And we are looking, we will be prioritizing though homes that are in areas that are at risk for housing loss due to market pressures or gentrification, because oftentimes we see that when a disaster hits an area, that's where a lot of investors start coming in and buying homes, especially homes that are vulnerable to that market pressure, and people are losing their housing. And we want to make sure that we can protect and create that housing security through these mitigation efforts. And then the last of it is administration for a little over $500,000. It's capped at 5% of our grant for our direct administration. We might be partnering with MDHA. They are experts in federal procurements and environmental review. And if that is the case, we would have some funding to support that partnership. So finally, for any interested developers that are on this webinar, this is a federal grant, and this is not Barnes Fund. We will not be using the Barnes Fund method. This will be a real procurement through either a Metro or through MDHA. The HUD environmental review requirements do apply, depending on how many homes are created. The Davis-Bacon requirements for wage rates apply. Section 3, again, is another labor standard. We will be following all federal procurements. All the projects have to meet civil rights laws, lead safe housing, reasonable cost standards. And I mentioned the duplication of benefits. That applies for the particularly the homes that, or the homeowners that are seeking reimbursement for their out-of-pocket expenses. But we will also need to do a duplication of benefits analysis for every homeowner, just to make sure that they have not received any benefit for home purchasing, which usually is not the case, but we have to have our files all lined up. And I know my compliance monitor's on here to make sure that we follow all of those rules. And then again, affordability requirements with this funding. 75% of this funding must benefit the 80% of the area median income. And I will add, I forgot to cover this in the new construction, that can be a mixed income project as long as 75% of the funding in the homes are sold to the 80% or below eligible income buyer or income eligible buyer, and then the remaining can go up to 120% AMI. So that's exciting to have economic integration and mixed income in a development. And then the next steps. So we will be wrapping up our action plan after our public meetings and capturing comments, submitting that to the State of Tennessee Economic and Community Development Department. That's the TNECD that you see on the screen. We hope to get their approval sooner rather than later. And once we do, especially the final approval, there will be a grant agreement. We will need to have Metro Council approve the final action plan and the appropriation. So we'll take that to Metro Council later this spring. We will be starting as soon as we get the signal from the state on the activities that are approved, start that program development, those RFPs, structuring the reimbursement program in this spring with the launch. I put late summer. That would be on the outside. We would love to launch something as soon as we can in the summertime. And we have to have all the funds and projects completed by September 30th of 2030. And then finally, ways to stay connected. And on this program, we have a disaster recovery website. And you can also email us at metrohousing@nashville.gov. And then we have the rest of the housing division websites. You can see, go there. We have different development tools listed, information on other work that we're doing. And with that, this is how you can submit your comments either at a virtual hearing today. We have an in-person one at the North Nashville Precinct in the community room on Thursday at 5 p.m. There is a link to a comment form on our website, or you can email us again at metrohousing@nashville.org. It would be great if you put in the subject line 2020 CDBG DR grant comments. Here's information on how to mail and hand deliver those. And there's a link to the full action plan. We will be posting the slide deck as well as the recording from this webinar on our website. And with that, I thank you and will now open it up for comments. So I'm going to keep my screen up in case we need to refer back to it to address any comments. But Daryl, I'm going to kick it over to you to read anything that's in the chat or to call on folks.
Okay, currently we do not have any questions in the chat or the question and answer section. So if you'd like to raise your hand, I will unmute you and you can ask your question. Okay, Lucille.
Lucille, I requested to unmute you, so you may have to unmute on your end.
Can you hear me now? Thank you. So my question has to do with the timing of the expenditures, and so kind of the timing of the housing. So if you were looking at using the funds in that $7 million piece that you talked about for new home construction, do you have a sense yet of the timing of when the property could be purchased, when site work could begin, those sorts of things? I'm just trying to kind of get a sense of that in relation to what you described.
So we would issue an RFP, and in that RFP, we will outline the program requirements, and the developer, if they are not proposing to develop on the 24th Avenue property and are because that is not a for purchase, Metro will grant that. We will likely require that to be put in some kind of land trust. But if the proposal is to use the funds on other property, we would expect in all cases, regardless of what property you're using, to provide a development timeline that would meet the expenditure deadlines that we outlined. The grant has to be closed out by September 30th, so we would want a project completed much sooner than that, so that we don't run up against having issues with the state or federal government.
Thank you.
Okay, Angie, we do have a couple of questions in the chat. One from Chase. Is there a per project maximum ask for new construction projects?
We will make the 7 million available for a project. We will evaluate based on the merits of whether the funding might be split or if it warrants going to a single project. I do want to pause here for a moment and caution folks if this is going into an existing project that may already have Barnes Fund in it, all construction would have to stop until the environmental review and all of the other federal pieces are completed. And we may have to discuss some procurement issues with that as well. But at this point, we're not capping we don't have are anticipating a per project cap.
Thank you. Also, we have one from James. Is this for all Davidson County or just District 2?
All of the activities except for the mitigation are targeted to the zip codes that we listed on this slide here. The property that we're making available is the only property we're making available is in District 2.
Okay. And we do have one from Jesse. Does new construction cover things such as site development cost?
We do allow site development and pre-development, on-site development costs to be part of the infrastructure. I mean, to be part of the project budget and allowable costs.
Okay, I do not see any other questions. So if someone wants to raise their hands. We do have another question. Is this for sale for affordable housing?
Yes, it is for sale only. We are not offering any rental funding or any funding for rental projects with this grant.
Okay, and then Councilperson Evans, Aaron, go ahead.
Thank you. I wanted to know, kind of going back to the very first section that you were talking about related to residents who may have, spent their own funds to be able to do their tornado restoration. How will those folks, I guess thinking back to I think it was UMCOR that did all the outreach and everything, will we be going back to that population that may have been in that database who could have identified that they were doing things on their own, or how will we be marketing, I guess, to the pool of people who may have a use for that pool of money?
Thank you, council member. We're going to have to scour every resource possible to reach folks, because to get the word out. Organizations like you mentioned, we will look to the long-term recovery group. We will even, if they're still in their homes, which is a requirement, if we can get the FEMA data sharing and get those names and directly contact folks, go through trusted community partners, faith institutions in those zip codes, council members. We would love to lean on you in those zip codes where we listed, to get the word out. So we would want to do and need to do a very, very robust engagement or outreach to get to those homeowners. So thank you for raising that.
Thank you for your answer.
And then Jesse has a follow-up question. Can these funds be used on a project already utilizing federal funding?
Again, we would still need to do, depending on when your environmental review was done, how close that was, we would just have to look at all the merits of the project and how it reconciles with ours. We would also want to look at the gap for the additional federal resources compared to the other applications that we would get in. We're not going to say no, that you can't, but it would be evaluated according to how well it met our requirements and intent.
Okay, Angie, I do not see any other hands raised or questions in either the Q&A or the chat. All right. We do have one question popped in. Is there any way that we can get the presentation?
It will be posted on our website along with the recording, a link to the recording. But if you will email us at metrohousing@nashville.gov with a request, we'll email you the PowerPoint directly. But if you go to our website now, there's a summary of these activities and the action plans available there as well.
All righty. Do we have any other questions?
Well, before we wrap up, Councilmember Toombs, I don't know if you have any other remarks that you would like to make, or Councilmember Evans, and I don't know if any other council members joined us, but would certainly love to give you all the opportunity.
Thank you, Angie. I don't have any other remarks.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I don't either. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Angie, it looks like we have one more hand raised.
Okay. Daryl, can you see the hands?
This is Shabir Bagani with Bagani Education. We're a local nonprofit in the Middle Tennessee area. I'm happy to be here this evening. I did just have a quick question because something I guess just was a little bit different from the presentation. And the Councilwoman Toombs spoke to the potential creation of a pocket park. I just want to know, where could we learn about that, and how could that kind of relate to what we're doing with this grant process?
As the project goes through, I'm sorry, I'm getting some feedback. As the project goes through the rezoning process, it will likely require an SP. And at that point, that's where the conversation around any pocket park or any green space would be in conversation with the community, with the council member, with the land development section of planning. If this is not a project that Metro Parks is interested in funding, it would be allowable cost as part of the grant to develop the green space in conjunction with the housing. And there will be more details in an RFP that we will issue later this spring or early summer.
Okay, are there any other questions? I do not see any, Angie.
Okay, well, we're also taking comments by email, or if you want to join again at the in-person meeting on Thursday night, we would love to see you in person. And I just want to thank you all for your time to join us this evening. Getting close to dinner hour, if not, we're already on it. So just really appreciate your time and your great questions. And I guess that concludes our public hearing. I'm going to check one more time, Daryl, to make sure there are no other chats or hand raised before I close the public hearing.
Okay, let me check. Nope.
Okay. Well, thank you all, and be safe and have a great rest of your evening.